Okay, good morning everybody. Just before we start, just the usual reminder that this will be recorded and available for the public. So welcome you all to this Communities Committee. Hope you've all had a nice break over Easter and fit and raring to go. As you'll see, we have a full business agenda to deal with today, and it is my intention to ensure we deal with this thoroughly in order to make important decisions that will deliver our Council's priorities and commitments. Reports for our members today bring forward proposals to regenerate our town centres, mitigate the adverse impact of welfare reform, support people out of poverty, and give communities direct influence on the prioritisation of community assets. All of these measures demonstrate the Council's commitment to protect our most vulnerable people and empower our communities. Nick, can you give us a Sederunt apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Dempster. We have 17 members present at the start of the meeting. Thank you.
Chair, I've got apologies from David Ingalls as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, thank you. Thanks, Nick. Any members of a declaration of interest? Graham?
Thanks, Chair. Maybe I have obviously in item 4, I declared an interest in the whole local development plan region-wide. Obviously, there's the local development plan settlement maps here as well on item 4. So I think it would be prudent for me to step outside the room for that item, Chair.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yes, I'm in a similar position. Potential conflict of interest, specifically in item 3.1 of 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay, in that case then we'll move on to item 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the 6th of February. This is for noting. Are we happy to note? Thank you. In that case then we'll move on to item 4. The Town Centre Living Fund, report by Head of Customer Services. This report provides members with a range of measures and innovative solutions to tackle empty homes, increase the number of people living in our town centres, and tackling properties that fail to meet the tolerable standard. The Town Centre Living Fund investment of £1 million will make a vital contribution to improving the built environment and the regeneration of our town centres. I've got Jim and Neil here to take any questions on the report. Have you questions for the report here? Andrew first, yeah.
Well, if nobody else wants to talk, then I'll have a shot. Really just about the Equalities Act. Here we are talking about the town centres, and rightly so too, of putting in support to keep our buildings in a fit state. What about our villages? Are we looking at doing something similar for them?
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, members have agreed a town centre living fund, and by its very nature, that will be focused in the region's larger towns and settlements, and that approach was agreed through the council plan on an annual basis. In terms of the Equalities Act, as I understand the Equalities Act, it's focused on people and focused on people with protected characteristics rather than place, would be my understanding of the Equalities Act. But the report is delivering the members' stated intentions as set out in the council plan.
Thank you. Andrew, you want back in?
If you don't mind, that's good, Chair. It was really then to look at how do we address the properties within our villages that are equally falling into disrepair. People living in them can't afford to do the maintenance on them, and they could have a major impact on those particular villages and the way that they look. Some of these buildings are an actual fact of historic value as well. So it's about making sure that all of our towns and villages are looking as best we possibly can. Yep,
thanks, Chair. The Town Centre Living Fund is funded through council tax income and second homes, which is currently generating revenue income in the region of £900,000 to £1 million a year, and that resource has been applied almost in its entirety to the Town Centre Living Fund. There is no additional income available to adopt a different approach, but obviously the criteria applied through the Town Centre Living Fund in terms of the geographical locations where the funding is made available is entirely a matter for members. I would go back and say that the approach set out in the report is intended to reflect the council priority as agreed through the council plan.
Thanks, Jim. Just maybe a bit of clarification. There's an external organisation that actually looks at homes in in rural, small rural areas. Am I right?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We also work as well very closely with the Dumfries and Galloway Small Communities Housing Trust, and they work with local communities generally in settlements that have a population of 3,000 and less. So they're involved in somewhere in the region of about 18 separate projects across the region at a village level, and most of those projects are focused on empty properties within those villages.
Thanks very much. I've got Adam and then John Campbell.
Chair, just to save James Allen, she's also wanting. I would just like to welcome this report. I think it's fair to say that the sort of last year when we were going through this process, there were a lot of members, myself included, who weren't entirely satisfied with the criteria. However, the criteria coming forward and the working with external organisations that's shown in this report is absolutely fantastic. I think it will really help to achieve the results that we're looking for to regenerate our town centres. In particular, I would just like to congratulate the team on working with the EI committee and ensuring that there's sort of cross-directorate working. And on that point in 3.1.2 on page 10, although there'll be work sort of done by EI and it'll be agreed at EI committee later this year, are we able to just make sure that the communities committee is kept up to date with the work that's happening in other directorates and trying to regenerate our town centres?
Thanks very much. John and then Jane.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also welcome this report as well. The amount of money that's going into, the town centres. I'd also like to mention the empty homes strategy and also the below tolerable standard grants. These are obviously welcome to bring these empty properties back into use. The question I would like to ask is on 3.4, the empty homes, where it says the range of tools available to tackle empty homes. I take it that you're making reference to that on 3.6, which is on page 13. All the bullet points there, is that the kind of tools that you're talking about there, Jim?
Okay, Jim, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Our experience is that empty homes are generally a very complex problem, and what we find is that once we engage with empty homeowners, there's generally not one answer to the question. The reasons that homes are empty in the first place are varied and complicated, and really what you need to do is develop solutions for each individual case, and that involves very much working with the circumstances of each individual property. Some of it can be as simple as providing support to the empty homeowner, just to help them take a next step to get a property back into use. But some of it can involve bringing the property condition up to a reasonable standard so that it can be let, for example. But there's no one solution to empty homes, and as members have already acknowledged, generally it involves working in partnership with a wide range of council services. So there can be, for example, building standards issues, there can be planning issues, there can be amenity issues, there can be environmental health issues, and that's why the report's also recommending that an empty homes partnership is established to try and formalise those relationships, to try and make the council work effectively to help tackle the problem.
Thank you. Okay, John. Yeah. Yeah, Jane.
I'd like to ask people to think about this. I do welcome the proposal of putting money into the bringing back into use of empty properties. No question about that. I'm absolutely pro that, and I'm also absolutely sure that we need to make sure that people can have affordable homes. But you know, the default effect of this policy is going to be to offer these properties to low-income households. So we are in essence supporting one particular tranche of the housing requirements, as opposed to looking at a balanced mix of uses of property in somewhere like, for example, Dumfries. And I just would like to say to people, have we in fact really considered, you know, how we are going to make balanced communities and healthy balanced communities, as opposed to providing housing for particular sections of society, which we wouldn't do in an ordinary property development. We would expect to have a percentage of affordable housing built into a housing development, and we're not doing that here. So I'm really saying I would like to welcome this as it stands, but I'd also like to then say, as we go forward, we should be considering what we're actually doing. In a town, a market town in the south, you would expect to be making certain that young professionals, people of income, and who therefore then spend in the centres of our towns, are able to live in a convenient and attractive place. And I worry that although this is very well intentioned, just exactly what it's going to be doing to the centre of town and how we would deal with that.
Jim?
Yep, thanks, Chair. Section 3.4.3 of the report there, just at the bullet point, is suggesting that the rent that's set is based on the local housing allowance rate. That rent is, those rates are sent by the Scottish Government through the rent officer, and they're based on an analysis of the local housing market. So while it's based on the local housing allowance rate, it's not suggesting that it's an affordable rent rate. It's a slightly different intention there, because that's intended to reflect the operation of the current housing market in relation to the private rented sector. So hopefully it may help achieve some of the objectives that Councillor Maitland's referring to, because it's not attempting to tie it to an affordable rent, which is generally what the registered social landlords rent their property at.
Thanks, Jane. Just before you come in, because I was just going to say we'll be monitoring, and that this could be amended as we go forward, and to take your concerns into consideration.
That's very helpful, and thank you, Chairman. That's extremely helpful, and I think that would be a good thing to be doing. It's just that in paragraph 3.2 and elsewhere in these papers, there is clear reference made to affordable housing in our town centres. So I wouldn't want to put people off, if you see what I mean. If the assumption is that these are only for housing associations and not, that's something that will come forward and not be necessarily picked up by people who are able to develop property. You see, in paragraph 3.2, it talks clearly about affordable housing development. I would pick it up as being only for affordable means.
Yeah, okay. Jim?
Yep, thanks, Chair. I mean, it's a very good point that's been raised by Councillor Maitland, and it's probably about the use of language within the report. When we're using the term affordable, it's not intended to mean an equivalent to social rent, but perhaps it's the use of language that within the report that's causing Councillor Maitland the concern, because the local housing allowance rate is based on the operation of the private rented market in the region, and it's based on basically averages of rents in particular geographical areas. So it would be the intention through the report that the properties that are brought back into use are made available to a wide cross-section of the population in Dumfries and Galloway, rather than people, for example, that are on registered social landlord waiting lists, because one of the key objectives of town centre regeneration is to try and ensure we have a diverse population living within our town centres and our settlement centres. So I hope that goes some way to addressing Councillor Maitland's concern, but I would suggest it's the use of language within the report that's maybe...
Thanks. I'm seeing Jane nodding, actually. That's enough for me. Andrew?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. I also welcome Dumfries and Galloway Council's commitment to trying to bring unused buildings into use in our town centres. But I've got a question regarding Shenram, and it is, can landowners and homeowners in Shenram tap into this money if they've already got a CARS project application? So that would be 2 dunts of grant from the council at the same time.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In terms of the £500,000 that's been made available for potentially private developers, our intention would be to bring reports back to this committee on an individual basis, so that members are able to consider the unique and very different circumstances that are likely to present in relation to each case. So we're very clear that within the report, what we'll do is work with property owners that want to make application to the fund and try and bring very clear reports back to members for further consideration. But that part of the budget, the £500,000, wouldn't be delegated to officials for decision. So in each case where an application is made, it would be brought back here for determination.
Thank you. No one else want to speak or ask a question? I'm just minded to move to recommendations then. Are we happy to agree 2.1 to 2.8 inclusive? Are we happy to move en masse? Yeah. Just a second, Jane, you want in?
And we will receive ongoing monitoring as per, that's implicit. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Like everything else we do in this department, Jane will have constant reporting back and monitoring. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Can somebody get the Graham and David back in, please? Thanks. Okay, we're ready to go. Move on to item 5, Home Energy Efficiency Programmes for Scotland, Area-Based Scheme 2018-19, HEAPS ABS to 18-19, report by the Head of Customer Services again. Reducing fuel poverty is a necessity to ensure people can live in energy efficient and healthy homes. This funding of over £2 million will improve people's quality of life and reduce the number of vulnerable and low-income households living in cold, unhealthy homes that are expensive to keep warm, pushing them into debt. The report provides members with an update on the funding allocation for the coming year from the Scottish Government for the Home Energy Efficiency Programme for Scotland. I think we'll just call that HEPS, or HEAPS, sorry. Members are asked to agree the projects for 2018-19, which will be submitted to the Scottish Government. And I've got Jamie Little here to take any questions. Sorry. Ian, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the project itself, I fully understand, I appreciate. But looking at the criteria on page 39, it's the final one. I do understand that that many households that would qualify for that may not necessarily have a bank account. but I think it's possibly discriminating against those that do have a bank account if they set up a direct debit, that they're actually they're given a -7 scoring. So it's actually penalising people that are planning for their own fuel.
Okay, Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the criteria there that are considered in part of the eco-flexibility, it's really about being able to pay by direct debit. So that's more referring to people who are paying a regular for things like power cards. And obviously, if you're paying by direct debit, your fuel bills will come down. The energy companies do tend to give better rates to people who will sign up to direct debit. So it's often about that, rather than having a bank account or not, it's how they're actually paying for their energy rather than actually having the ability to do a direct debit. So the costs are often higher for people who aren't able to pay by direct debit for whatever reason. And sometimes that's based on a requirement from the energy company themselves that they want it to be paid as a prepayment, such as prepayment meters.
Jamie, is this a national document that we have to kind of adapt or adopt? Is this a template that comes down from central government or what?
Thanks, Chair. There is a template that has been created, and it's obviously the idea is to fit that to suit the different regional characteristics. This itself would only, if members were to agree this recommendation, would only be the second local authority in Scotland to sign up for this eco-flexibility. Really what it's doing is offering us a better chance to deliver the eco-funding in a way that meets the needs of the local people of Dumfries and Galloway. So although there is guidance and criteria that are set by the government, we would only be the second local authority in Scotland to sign up for that.
Thanks. I've got Ian wanting back in, then Jane and Andrew Justy.
I do understand the reasons behind it, but I still feel that in general terms it's sending a wrong message here. If you're going to plan, you're being treated, you're being given a minus score. I wasn't quite clear on the answer that you did give. Has this criteria been laid down that we must follow it, or can we amend it?
The criteria can be amended. It's not been laid out. There's guidance given. We have to make sure we stick within the guidance. And obviously the idea of the criteria that's within here are about identifying those who are in the most severe fuel poverty. It can be amended, but obviously keeping it within the guidance. And it's obviously for members to make that decision.
Thanks. I knew that you want to come back in later, Ian. I've got Jane and Andrew Justy.
Is it me? Thank you. Well, I read this with deep concern. 2.4 on page 38 says quite clearly that Dumfries and Galloway will continue to focus on targeting households in the lowest SIMD data zones in the region. Now, we all know that 80% of income-deprived people don't live in those data zones. Because, I mean, that's at least, thank goodness, at least one thing that has been recognised. And I read this and I thought to myself, how on earth would somebody in the Stewartry actually ever qualify? If we're concentrating on the lowest SIMD data zones in the region, there isn't one in the Stewartry, and yet we know that 80% of income-deprived people do not live in those data zones, and that's absolutely characteristic of a rural area. So I have to say I'm quite concerned about the wording of this particular letter, because I don't think it would actually recognise need in the Stewartry.
Thanks, Chair. The SIMD data is used, and that's based on Scottish Government guidance that would focus on the SIMD data zones. But within that, there's also the ability to look at individual properties that stand alone. So the Dumfries and Galloway rural insulation project that's mentioned in the report obviously covers the whole region. Obviously, the property type becomes the eligibility there rather than the SIMD data zone it sits in. So that's referring to the properties that are in bands A to C, and obviously of the suitable construction type as well. So while the focus and the main target is on SIMD data zones, and that does look at more urban populations, there is the scope there as well to look at individual standalone rural properties and in the villages across the region as well.
Again.
I'm sorry to appear difficult about this, because we're all facing and trying to face the same way and get the same outcome. But I do have to challenge the officers about the wording here, that we are focusing on households in the lowest SIMD data zones in the region. And I don't fully understand why somebody in a terrace in northwest Dumfries is any more vulnerable to fuel poverty than somebody in a cottage with no central heating up a track in the Stewartry. I just don't get it. So I'm really not happy with the wording as it stands of this letter, Chairman.
Okay, we'll come back to that, Jane. Yeah, Andrew Justy.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. My question was based on the table that Councillor Blake was scrutinising. I appreciate that that's just a snapshot, but personally I would have liked to have seen if you have double glazed windows, are you in an old home that has sash and case, which could be drafty, quite chilly? What kind of insulation does your house have? Because I think that is something that, not just the case of what you use to heat your home with, etc., but or how you pay your debts, or how you pay your energy bills, but how do you retain heat in your home? I think that's something that hasn't been explored here, because that obviously makes things cheaper if you can retain that heat.
Jamie?
Yeah, that's not included in the table, quite right. And if members felt that EPC ratings was something that they wanted to include, obviously this is a draft that's to be published on the council's website, and if members are minded to change that criteria to include potentially energy performance certificates, so that they could say what how the property performed on an energy efficiency basis, then that's something that can be amended before this is signed by the Chief Executive and then published.
You want back in, Andy?
Yes, please. See, to get one of those certificates, though, does that put on a cost to the applicant?
There is a cost for carrying out energy performance certificates, but this work is going to be linked to the work of the heap SABs anyway. And at that point, the energy performance certificate is taken on a property, so there wouldn't be any additional cost on the actual householder.
Thanks. Rob?
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just would like to check my understanding of what the status of the appendix is? If I've read the report correctly, this is additional to the projects which are submitted, which are effectively how we would propose to spend the £2 million allocation. The purpose of the appendix is to try and lever in additional money from the scheme, which I have to say I'm not familiar with, although I've heard it and heard of it, the energy company's obligation. Now, I understand why it would be important for the two to link up together, but if I've understood it correctly, the appendix is to try and get additional money, but it doesn't characterise or rule out any of the things that members have quite rightly been raising, because as I had understood it, those were already covered by the projects that we were submitting to the Scottish Government. But, I mean, if you could clarify that for me, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, that's completely correct. This statement of intent is completely optional. The local authority don't have to go ahead with publishing the statement of intent. There's no requirement. The heap SABs projects would still run if members were to agree the projects being presented. This is to allow the local authority to work with the Energy Agency to improve the flexibility of that funding, so we can really target it at the most fuel poor within our region. It's a benefit that the Energy Agency have experience with, and they also work in East and South Ayrshire, and they have been able to lever in additional eco funding based solely on this signing of the intent. There will still be eco funding whether members choose to proceed with this or not, but it's the additional flexibility that's offered from agreeing this recommendation.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm seeing two separate issues here. There's obviously how we're going to allocate the 2.1 million and how we're going to be reporting that forward, and then the statement, which is a separate issue, or issue of intent. Derek, have you any suggestions here?
Thanks, Chairman. I think what we're clear about is fuel poverty affects everybody potentially in Dumfries and Galloway, and this council is clear that, as Councillor Maitland has identified, that the SIMD index does tend to favour urban areas, and we're certainly in discussions with the Scottish Government positively on that issue. So what I would think we could focus on in the appendix, paragraph 2.5 talks about targeting vulnerable residents. Therefore, what I would suggest with the committee's agreement, Chairman, is that we further clarify this issue with the agency with a view to ensuring that, in fact, the particular circumstances of the rural area that we have are taken into account. So, therefore, there's more emphasis on targeting vulnerable individuals rather than specifically the SIMD. But I'm happy to be guided by members, Chairman.
Thanks. That seems to me an eminent, so it's a sensible solution. Because I'm not getting any sense that anybody is unhappy with 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 in the recommendations. It's what's set out in the appendix that seems to be causing the angst amongst members. And I do take the point that it's that Derek's outlined there, that we need to highlight the whole region has got a fuel poverty problem, not just the SIMD. And of course, it all depends which SIMD you use, but that's a different matter. And all too often, we take urban deprivation as the only factor, where there are actual other measures in SIMD. Jane, do you want back in?
Yes, I thank the Director for his clarification, and I think that's absolutely correct. The secret, of course, will be in the monitoring about how many of these properties do actually appear in the 80% of non-SIMD properties and the 20% that are. Because even in 3.4, and the Deputy Leader has pointed out that these are two separate issues, which I absolutely understand. Nevertheless, this is the Scottish Government's official tool to identify geographical concentrations of deprivation. And it sticks in my craw, this constant obsession with geographical concentrations of deprivation, which in a rural area are very, very much less appropriate than other areas. So the secret, again, will be in the monitoring. So could we possibly have that clarified as well?
Absolutely. And I think if everyone's minded and happy, we could agree to delegate the Chief Executive to incorporate the changes that Derek has suggested, and circulate that around the group leaders and the Chair and Vice Chair to make sure they're all happy with their wording before it goes away. Would you be comfortable with that? Yep. Okay. In that case, then no one else wants this. Ian, sorry, yep.
It's still going back to the point that I raised. I really feel that that's sending out the wrong message. It would almost encourage people to stop paying direct debit and to increase the scoring. It's a minor amendment, but I feel that should be 0 instead of -7 in the scoring.
Again, that's in the appendix, isn't it? And that's the work that we could leave with Derek and the team to take forward and bring back solutions to the group leaders. And if we can't reach consensus in that little forum, we've got a problem, haven't we? Yeah. But your point's well made, Ian, and you're happy with that, Derek? Yeah. Yeah. So with that in mind, then I'm going to move to the recommendations. Are we happy to note recommendation 2.1, note the funding allocation of 2.063 million for the Dumfries and Galloway Home Energy Efficiency Programme, HEEPS, area-based scheme? We agreed? Yeah, we're noting, right. Are we happy to note the final outturn position for the 2017-18 projects? Right, noting, yeah, thank you. 2.3, are we agreeing the projects for 2018-19 to be submitted to Scottish Government? Paragraph 3.4. Agreed. And we, 2.4, will slightly word that differently, Nick, to agree to delegate the Chief Executive to sign the statement of intent. If you could put maybe a sentence in there, that, after discussions between the Director, Chief Exec, the group leaders, and the Chair and Vice Chair. Yeah, happy with that? Okay, is that competent? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Happy with that? Yeah, agreed. Thank you. In that case, thanks very much. We'll move on now to item 6, Universal Credit and Welfare Update. Council is committed to protecting the most vulnerable people and mitigating the worst effects of welfare reform. The 150,000 approved as part of the Council budget will provide much needed resources to support Scottish Welfare Fund and discretionary housing payments to people in need and experiencing poverty. Members are provided with an update on the implementation of Universal Credit Full Service by the Department for Work and Pensions, as well as an indication of the anticipated local impact. We've got Paula Doherty here to take any questions on the report. I'm just minded to go straight to questions. Tracy?
Thank you, Chair. It's 3.1, job centres within Dumfries and Galloway Council area and in Dumfries and Sederunt will implement full service universal credit on the 16th of May 2018. My question is, are we as a council ready for this rollout date?
Yes. Our original rollout date was February, and we were on track to be ready for February. I think from other local authorities in Scotland, you can think you're ready and it's still hard, but we're ready. I was speaking to the DWP last week, and they've, in relation to our preparedness, we are well on track.
Thanks. Adam?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think I can't remember how many communities committees we've had since I've been elected and how many times I've spoken on universal credit. And I think, working on from Tracy's answer, I think thanks to all the team who've been doing a fantastic job in preparing for this. But as we know from previous experience of other local authorities, we can be prepared as we like. Unfortunately, some of our most vulnerable people living in Dumfries and Galloway are going to suffer as a result of universal credit rollout. But I do think that we have taken a number of steps in the budget agreed last month, along with the preparations of the team to make sure that we're as prepared as possible and that we can mitigate the effects of welfare reform as much as possible. I know we've sent various letters to various ministers who've shown absolutely no interest, and that last letter we got back from whatever minister that was, I can't quite remember his name off the top of my head, I actually don't have a clue if he knew what he was talking about, and I don't actually know if he understood the letter that was sent from you, Andy, as chair, and it really just baffles me as an institution, if the UK government and being strategic lead for the DWP are prepared themselves, and I think that it's actually a failure of the UK government to protect our most vulnerable citizens by not being able to answer basic questions that we as a committee have about the rollout of universal credit, and so that to help our understanding, to help the officers understand, and to ensure that this rollout and the rollout of full service on the 16th of May is done as smoothly as possible. I will not rant any longer because it's not going to change anything. The only thing that I will ask is that I know that for a number of people living in Dumfries and Galloway, they are probably much easier going to a job centre that's not within Dumfries and Galloway, thinking, Langham, it might be easier public transport wise to go to Carlisle or the Borders. I just wonder, I know that other local authority areas and other job centres have different rollout dates, and is it possible for people living in Dumfries and Galloway who it might be easier to go to a job centre out with Annan, Dumfries or Sederunt, are they still able to go to those other job centres and get the universal credit service rather than having to make what could be a more expensive journey elsewhere to get to Annan, Dumfries or Sederunt?
Carlisle Job Centre's already rolled out. and has been for some time. Cumnock, I think, is on a different timeline. When we did live service rollout, we had to close the door to customers from Dumfries and Galloway signing on in Cumnock. There was very few people in that group. Just now, customers can't claim universal credit unless they live in a universal credit full service area. It's not dictated to which job centre they go to. They can't just decide to travel to Carlisle to get universal credit. How that customer will receive support from their work coach will be defined by their home job centre, which will be a Dumfries and Galloway job centre for Dumfries and Galloway customers. I will speak to the DWP about whether or not it's easier for them to go to another area, could they get that. But I do know it doesn't happen to many customers just now.
Thanks. Just to clarify then, so if I live in Canonby, I can get the bus directly into Carlisle, and I can't go to Carlisle, I have to go to Annan, is that right? Have I heard you correctly?
Yes. You can still go to Carlisle Job Centre. Nothing stops you from going to Carlisle Job Centre. But in relation to having a work coach and someone who supports you with your claim process and all the additional support you would get, that would be an Annan.
Thanks. I mean, I sent a copy of the response out to everybody. I think it's a civil letter. You know, it's in public servant speak. You know, a civil servant's written it, I would suggest, for the minister. But for me, it doesn't seem to take any clue as to what the geography is of Dumfries and Galloway. It just like they don't seem to get it. I think is my problem, and we've got a whole country response here when we're asking for a very localised response. Because if I'm right, Paula, there's only 3 job centres, am I right, in Dumfries and Galloway? So, you know, where the hell are we with this? What can we do? That was more a statement. Adam, you want back in?
I think just on that point, Chair, I mean, I really actually struggled reading the letter, and I think it was a part of, yes, civil servant speak, but I'm currently writing a 15,000-word dissertation. I've read academic literature that's, frankly, a lot more straightforward understanding than what that letter was, and that is saying something. You know, it baffled me completely. I think, you know, I'm not going to say anything else on the matter, just really, really poor.
We're kind of going in circles here. I think we are where we are, and I think we just commend the staff group for having everybody up and running, ready to go when this kicks in, and we'll just have to monitor it very closely and see what it is. Jane, do you want in?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is about the question with respect to people impacted by the benefit cap. I think we ought to know about this, because there is a proposal to continue with the funding the shortfall. I don't know whether this is wise, helpful or sustainable, or whether we should actually be putting more money into the efforts that we're making through our anti-poverty strategy with respect to supporting children directly. I think through families directly, and so I'm not certain whether this is a useful and sensible way forward, and indeed, as I say, sustainable. I mean, I know it's okay, I think, for this year, but what happens next year? And I don't know whether this is a bigger problem than it used to be, or a smaller problem, or who's involved and where they're involved. So I think, Chairman, it seems to me a very blunt instrument in many ways, simply the benefit cap relief system. And I think I'd like a little bit more information before I agree that.
Well.
Okay, as stated in the report, there's 63 households within Dumfries and Galloway currently impacted by the benefit cap. I have recently been dealing with 2 families who have 5 children who are threatened with eviction. And the reason they're threatened with eviction is because their discretionary housing payments were being tapered away and they were being unable to pay the shortfall for their rents. This caused significant financial stress on that family. We were then dealing with it from a housing options angle. and the exceptional circumstances that is written in the policy allowed me to continue a discretionary housing payment to prevent that eviction at this point. The request just now is to open it up, because I can't use exceptional circumstances time and time again to allow continued support for families who have no other options. You know, it won't be, there's still a financial hardship calculation, there's still a discussion, and the customers are still expected to work with us to get themselves out of a benefit cap, which is taking into employability and skills support, looking to see whether there's other benefits that they should be receiving. Is there something else that can be done? But when we've reached the point where there's nothing else that can be done, and the best thing for this family at this time is continuing their discretionary housing payment to prevent an eviction. Because if they were to be evicted, the cost to the council would be significantly higher.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. That's helpful.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think, just as a comment, at 311, it's the tool, it's left in the toolbox for us at this moment in time, but it'll obviously be monitored all through the year, and reports will be coming back to this committee at different times, just outlining exactly what the progress is or what the situation is. Is there anyone else got any other questions? No. In that case, then we'll just move to the recommendations. So 2.1, note the date of full service universal credit as 16th of May. Noted. Note the progress made in relation to the action plan. Okay. Note the arrangements put in place for the 159,000 policy development funding to support customers experiencing hardship due to welfare reform. Noted. And 2.4, agree the proposed amendment to the discretionary housing payment policy, paragraph 3.11. Okay, happy with that? Agreed? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 7, tackling poverty in Dumfries and Galloway. Again, the Council is committed to taking comprehensive action to ensure people in poverty have the support and resources they need. The additional 1.3 policy development funding agreed as part of this year's Council budget will deliver tangible support for individuals and families experiencing poverty. We also recognise the superb work of the large number of volunteers involved in projects that tackle poverty, including the work of the Tackling Poverty Reference Group. Many of our projects and activities have been based on their direct and personal experience of poverty. This approach ensures our funding will make a difference on the front line. The report provides members with an update on the progress made in implementing the Tackling Poverty Action Plan. It also describes the current position in relation to a number of related activities being undertaken to tackle poverty within our region. Wendy Jesson and Harry Hay here to take questions on the report. Given the extensive focus across the Council to deliver on the priorities associated with tackling poverty in our region, a number of lead officers from other directorates are also here today and available should there be any questions relating to their respective projects or service areas. I can see Lillian from the Chief Social Work Officer amongst others. I've got the wrong glasses on to see distance. But there will be other officers here to answer questions. Graham?
Thanks, Chair. Certainly welcome this report, and all council members are keen to see a decrease in poverty across Dumfries and Galloway. I've got some parts of poverty in North West Dumfries and that, and some other members in other wards across the region. But obviously, looking at the comprehensive report, housing is a main issue. That housing, we need more affordable housing. People need to get into better housing, better accommodation. That seems to be a problem across the region. It seems to be a problem across Scotland, and it needs to be addressed. And hopefully, there's still a shortfall in the house building programme. What concerns me, I'm an employer, and one of the ways of getting people out of poverty is getting people back in employment. There's not enough incentives. Obviously, in the report here, you're not actually I don't seem to see there's any common working agreement with employers here, because we need to get people back into work, and that gets people out of poverty. There's no incentives for employers to take people on. As an employer, I have no taxation incentives. Also, as well, one thing that concerns me as well through the local business and that, we need lower taxes in Scotland. Lower taxes will actually bring down poverty and unemployment. And another thing as well, we need less tape and regulations for employers. That would actually get reduce poverty across the region and across Scotland. And another thing as well, I'm quite concerned about. We're obviously coming out of Europe. Obviously, a lot of European legislation would change. So some of this legislation, some of these employers' legislation needs to be put into writing, and we need to reduce the poverty in some of these areas, like grants for farmers or landowners for building houses in the countryside, or doing up farm cottages, or extra taxation, taxation incentives for people doing up properties for unemployed and people in poverty. We need to be dealing with these issues. So I hope these points could be taken on board, that employers need to be contacted as well.
Fine, Harry?
Thanks, Chair. As I think Councillor Bell's outlined, poverty in its widest sense is a hugely complex situation, certainly specifically in relation to employment opportunities. The Council's employability team are heavily involved in the Link to Work project, so certainly I would agree that the whole focus needs to be on trying to maximise individuals' opportunities to gain employment that hopefully pulls them out of poverty to start with.
Come back in, Chair, but there's no incentives for employers to take on unemployed people and that. There's really not incentives there for the Scottish Government. We need to be looking at ways of making it easy for employers to take on people in training and basis.
I think that's actually the remit and EEI. It's no here, Graham, your point's made, but it's wrong committee. Adam, and then Andrew Wood.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just not quite sure how to follow that, tackling poverty to help and increase private individuals' profits. But I'll leave that said. I'm sure that Councillor Bell will. I'm sure that.
Excuse me, a bit order, thank you.
I'm sure that Councillor Bell will welcome the number of EEI proposals in here about in raising the profile of the living wage, and helping to get people into work through various schemes and various external funding that's been brought in through the council. I was going to say that I think that it's really good to see the progress that's been made. I think some of the best progress charts that I've seen in my short time as a councillor. In particular, I just wanted to say about making sure we get some reports back about the work that's going on, in particular about the participatory budgeting events. I understand there'll be a report at the June committee meeting once all the PB events have taken place for this tranche, but just wanted to make sure that we'll get a report before the next tranche of participatory budgeting takes place later this financial year, and also we can make sure we get a detailed report at the next Communities Committee about the implementation of the new policy development funding that was agreed at full council just last month, and the tackling poverty initiatives we've got there.
Thanks. Okay, yes, that's a yes. Andrew Wood and then David James.
Thank you, Chair. It's within 3.13 participatory budgeting. There have been concerns raised by the communities in my ward with regard to the short time space that they had to fill in the forms, application forms, and some organisations would have liked to have been able to have submitted an application. And it's just to look at how we can better inform those within our communities, and also to look at whether we can extend for the future that window of opportunity.
That's actually comes as a separate report to the next, to I think June committee. The lessons learned from this current round. Okay, so Jamie's come down the front here, but I think that's the answer for you. Basically, that should be a full report coming forward, warts and all the different, the 4 localities and everything else. Okay, David and then Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, George Osborne's commitment to the minimum and then living wage has done more to address poverty in this country than any government for a long time. But I'm wondering how we actually assess poverty, because as I understand it, the normal way is to take something like 60% of the mean income. Now, we live in a nation, Scotland, which is governed pretty disastrously as far as the economy would go, but I think locally we have to
see from Councillor Wilson's comments that really that is the problem. Not understanding how profits can lead to jobs and better incomes is exactly the problem, and that's probably why there was a complete lack of interest in boosting the economy in the D&G budget. But given that we're in the weaker part of the UK, and in a subsection like Dumfries and Galloway is even weaker, how could we have a high count in 60%? It's a statistical impossibility, surely, for us to end poverty in our area. It can't happen.
Is there an answer to that?
Chair, no, I mean, I think we've been very clear throughout our whole strategic focus on dealing with poverty. We will never eradicate poverty in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think what we've made a very strong commitment to do, particularly in the council plan and recent budget development process, is do all we can to mitigate it. And I think the range of reports on today's agenda, including this item, obviously, I think, for me, certainly stands a very strong signal that links to housing, poverty, fuel poverty, our vibrant town centres, etc., implementing universal credit, homelessness are all inextricably linked. And what we are trying to do is make the best we can of the resources we've got to make the biggest impact.
Is that a follow-up, David?
Just briefly, I welcome that. Yeah, that's all we can do here is to mitigate it, because the only solution would be through a better economy. Thank you.
Well, maybe you can send the message to Downing Street that be answered quickly, but it's Ian.
Have we had any success in promoting credit unions within schools? I think it's essential that young people learn about the benefits of credit unions before they enter a spiral of debt, which can often be extremely difficult to get out of.
Yeah. Okay, Wendy.
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to the credit unions, the Credit Union Development Officer post, which has been supported well, the Credit Union Development Officer actually goes into schools to help promote savings schemes and get young members signed up to both the Stranraer Credit Union and the Solid Credit Union. So members will note in the appendix to a report under COMCS APO 4.3b, I don't have page numbers, sorry, that there's actually detail there on the work that the Credit Union Development Officer has been doing. And at the moment, there's Partnership for School Savings Schemes are being delivered in Applegarth, Hutton Primary, Wallace Hall Primary and Dalry Primary. And there's also been S5 and S6 pupils at Stranraer Academy who have received financial awareness raising sessions. So they are working well in schools, and part of the ongoing work of the Development Officer is to increase that throughout the region. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got Jane, Adam again, and then Andrew Justy.
Thank you. Just an administrative point. I knew I wasn't going completely potty. It's on page 90 of our coloured section here. And I'm going back to the whole business about the Town Centre Living Fund, which has the aim, and I'm quoting, the aim of increasing the supply of affordable housing in town centres. So we must be completely clear about that. If you look at that on page, as I say, 90 of 248, we're not actually trying to increase the supply of affordable housing. We're trying to increase housing and bring back into use empty housing. So again, that's just to be absolutely clear about the wording of that aim, judging by what we decided in the first or second report that we discussed earlier. The other thing I wanted to talk about, please, is the issue of completion of the Intensive Family Support Service Action Plan, which I understand has been assigned to Lillian. I would just like to say on this, the Audit and Risk Committee of both the current Audit and Risk Committee and I know the chairman is not here to say this, but I think he would be perfectly happy if I was to make absolutely clear that we are desperate to get to the bottom of why we have been unable to connect up the IT systems and sharing of data. And we want to be absolutely certain that that's going to be part and parcel of what is happening through this project, because we were told that it had stuttered to a halt because of the named person legislation. That's what we were told in the Integrated Joint Board Audit and Risk Committee. And in both of these committees, there is a complete determination that we must get this to work, both in adult services and in children's services. So I'm just really asking at this point, can we have an assurance that that is going to be part and parcel of what is required through this project here?
Thank you. I can give you assurance that the information sharing is progressing. However, it is progressing slowly, and that is a consequence of the new GDPR legislation, as well as some of the national guidance that we have received with regards to the named persons legislation. However, at a recent Chief Officers Group, there was agreement that the 3 legal members from NHS, ourselves and Police Scotland would get together to find a way to overcome some of the challenges that we've got with in relation to information sharing. I can, however, give assurance that we continue to share information, and there are some challenges with the portal that we currently have. However, we are using that for elements of children's services, particularly with the IRDs and the pre-birth case conferences. So it's in progress, but some of the national legislation has had an impact on the speed at which we can deliver. But I can assure the committee that we are working hard to have that resolved.
Just on that, Lillian, will that be reported elsewhere?
It is reported through the Children's Services Executive Group, which ultimately comes to SIPL and Social Work Committee, and also to the IJB Audit and Risk, and it is currently an action for the Chief Officers Group.
Thanks very much. That's very helpful, actually, because it lets members of this committee just understand what's happening elsewhere. So thanks. The question is very valid, Jane. Thank you. Thanks, Lillian. Adam, and then Andrew Justy.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a bit fed up with some of these comments about, you know, what was the administration's budget and now the council's budget not being investing in economic growth. I think it's fair to say the council budget really does invest in economic growth. I know myself that as the events champion, whenever I go out to events, I always ask about how local businesses are benefiting, what sort of economic impact we're having, and what sort of assessment has been done of that. My point comes to the fact that work is not always the way out of poverty, because there are too many people who suffer from low pay and end up in work and also in poverty. And that is why I disagree with Councillor Bell when he was talking about a number of initiatives to help reduce taxes and cut red tape. Sometimes that red tape is not the best, but is necessary. Sometimes some of us believe that actually progressive taxation is the way in which we can create a better society. I wondered if there is any statistics about in-work poverty, particularly in Dumfries and Galloway, and how we're able to monitor that over the coming years, about if we're managing to increase the wages of the lowest paid workers to ensure that that is helping to get them out of poverty.
Harry? Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I mean, yeah, quite clearly there are people in employment that also face poverty, and that's certainly something we're very aware of in our financial wellbeing team. So certainly if members found it useful, we're quite happy to provide those types of statistics as well to give a more balanced perspective across the region.
Just so we're absolutely aware what we're talking about here, so when these things come to light, they'll all be added to the pot for the report that comes back to give us a full update on what the extent of the problem is. Yeah, am I right in that? Yeah. Thanks very much. Andrew Justy.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from Councillor Bell's point, my family got a small catering business, and we employed a lad who was in homeless accommodation. Once the council found out that he was in employment, they started charging him for that homeless accommodation at a rate that, let's be honest, it was more than what a 4-bedroom house in Stranraer was to rent. So that ended up, he left us because it was actually better for him to stay unemployed in homeless accommodation for free than actually having to pay for homeless accommodation in work. So how do we actually tackle that scenario in the future?
Just before you answer, can we actually anonymise that, because I wouldn't like it to they identify your member of staff. So, and that could be dealt with outside this room with officers. But Harry, have you any?
Yeah, thanks. Obviously, we wouldn't want to comment on a specific case. However, very often when it comes to benefit administration, we're very much dictated by the benefit legislation that we need to apply. I mean, we've obviously got the homeless improvement plan as the next item on this agenda, but certainly I think as members will be aware, there is a certain degree of discretion that we can apply as a local authority, but equally there is benefit legislation and policy that we need to simply implement. But I think, as we've demonstrated in Dumfries and Galloway, we're trying to mitigate the impact of that as much as we possibly can.
Okay, Andrew Wood and then John Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 98, and it's the one about increasing employment opportunities for people with offending backgrounds. Now, I do recognise that the due date's on March the 2019. However, there was already in place a system for increasing employment opportunities for such people. I would have thought that you would have had some progress within that percentage. You've got zero progress at the moment.
You saying it, Wendy? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to that one, increasing awareness and knowledge of the relevance of convictions to local employers, myself and Vicky Binney are working together on the project to deliver that. Now, the initial due date had been put in for the 31st of March 2019 for the project to begin, and we're working with partner organisations from the Community Justice Partnership. There's already been some training that's been delivered in relation to that, and more is planned shortly. So it just started a little later than we had planned, but it will be delivered. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew. Yeah, John.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to bring to the attention of members on page 55, Challenge Poverty Week, that myself and many other councillors attended. And just to say that it was very disappointing that nobody from the Conservative Party even turned up to this event. My question would be, could we have another one, and maybe we could encourage other members to come along and see for themselves the good work that some of these projects were taking forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, certainly, National Challenge Poverty Week, national scheme. I think Dumfries and Galloway was held up as a shining light across Scotland in terms of the way we've responded to it. I think we tried to give a perspective across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, and certainly we plan to do the same in October 2018. And as usual, all elected members will be extended a warm invitation to get involved in it.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. A couple more questions in this. The development of increasing employment opportunities of people with offending backgrounds project on page 98. This is just really a question, I suppose, a performance management question. Apex has been commissioned to do this, really, I think, for as long as I can remember. And they have a target of 300 people. Now, unless I've misunderstood this, we appear to be applying more revenue, more resource to this, and yet if Apex are commissioned to deal with 300 referrals, what are we getting extra for our money?
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to that particular project, Apex are working with the Community Justice Manager, so we felt that more partnership working would enable the project to be delivered to reach more people and to actually provide a better outcome. So the fact that we're working with more partners will bring more benefits. Apex are delivering the number in relation to the project, which is 300, but with additional partnership work and the outcomes for each of the people involved will be substantially higher.
Jane?
Sorry, Chairman.
Do we help? Chairman, I think Councillor Maitland is inferring that there's additional money going into the project. That's not the case, just to clarify the position. The report here is intended to ensure we have a comprehensive overview of all of the poverty activity, some of which is funded, some of which is mainstream activity, but ensuring that that is more targeted towards poverty. Hopefully that's helpful.
Just when we're on that, I'm kind of looking at Lillian here. Is this part of the Commission for Apex in terms of community justice?
In terms of justice services, it's for those that the current contract with Apex is for those that are on an order. For some service users, they may not be on an order but have a previous offending background. So that's where the wider partnership will be able to assist.
Thanks for that clarity, Lillian. Thank you, and thanks, Derek. I've got Sean and David.
Yeah, thanks. I was really just commenting, I've seen a lot of these reports come to various council service committees, but it's really just to commend the fact that there's not any amber or red within, the whole list of these projects. I know some of them are yet to start, etc., but there's nothing being flagged up, that, they can't go ahead, etc. So, as I said, it's probably a unique situation when I've seen a report, especially with so many different and issues that are actually got to tackle poverty, etc. I mean, the fact that we've got green lights all the way, that's excellent. So I just wanted to feed that into the discussion.
Thanks very much. That was kind of my thoughts entirely. But I've got David and then Andrew Justy, and I think we'll move on. I think after that.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, if you're one of the less well qualified or in other ways disadvantaged persons and you're in a zone of a weak economy, you're going to find it difficult to get a job. And if that economy would boom tremendously, jobs would be all over the place. Employers would be falling all over themselves to get you. But now that we're leaving the European Union, we have one chance to make a big corrective measure, and that's to stop the unfettered immigration of unskilled people. And that would help people at the bottom of the ladder tremendously, and I hope while we're lobbying on other issues we would send a lobbying letter to the government asking that we have much stronger immigration controls in the post-Brexit world to help people further down the social scale. Thank you.
Thanks for that statement, but I'd just like to point out to you the National Farmers Union have approached me saying that they can't get enough workers in this country because they need the imported bill. This is too serious an issue to become a party political football. So we just cut out the rubbish and let's talk about fighting anti-poverty in Dumfries and Galloway. Okay? So, and Andrew, just Ian, you want in?
Very briefly on that last part, I totally agree with you. I think it's becoming a party political thing here. I think it's not productive in any way at all. I think we should stick to the issues involved, and that's on both sides of it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, David. Andrew?
I'll retract what I was going to say, Chair, because it was in defence of the Challenging Poverty Week and how I wasn't able to be there. But since that's not in this paper, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. In that case, then, I'm moving the recommendations. Are we happy to note that 2.1, the continuing progress of the implementation of the Tackling Poverty Action Plan and a wide range of related activities, agreed? And consider extending the completion date for the delivery of the Poverty Alliance awareness training to 31st of March 2019, agreed? Okay, and I'd just like to put in record, I think we need to thank the staff and the volunteers and everything else who have been involved in this process to date. Okay, thank you. No, what more? Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Right. Thanks, Harry. Okay, let's move on to item 8, the Homeless Service Improvement Plan progress. Report provides members with an update on the Homeless Service Improvement Plan, which is focused on protecting our most vulnerable people and prioritises the avoidance of homelessness. I'm pleased to say that the Council is significantly addressing the risks that were identified by the Scottish Housing Regulator in 2015. On behalf of this committee, I would wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our homeless staff who have worked tirelessly to bring about a transformed service. I'm also pleased to note that the service benefited from the work of Amy Jordan, a graduate trainee, who has played a key role in obtaining service user feedback as part of the new strategy. I'm delighted to say that Amy has now secured a temporary post within the service. So as well as improving the homeless service, we have modernised our workforce and maximised the talent within our local young people. Again, I've got Lorna Campbell here to take any questions on the report. Adam?
Thanks, Chair. I think that this is a fantastic. It's on time, more than on time, and rather early than when we were expecting it. And of course, homelessness in Dumfries and Galloway isn't necessarily very visible in your face as what it is in many cities. It's very much quite often behind closed doors, quite often what people don't really think, having a home but actually not being able to travel to work on time, so sofa surfing is a huge issue. There's just on the actual strategy, page 142 and 143 of the report, in 5.12 it says that discharge from prison, hospital and leaving care is 8% of the homeless presentations. However, in 5.15, it then goes on to say that 20% of homeless presentations in 2016-17 came from people who were care experienced in the past 5 years. I was just wondering if we could get some explanation behind those two different statistics.
Lorna?
Yep. Sorry. Yes, the statistics in 5.12 are people who present directly to homeless, directly from leaving care, prison discharge. The other statistic, there's 3 sets of statistics we report to Scottish Government. So the other one is they didn't come directly from leaving care to homeless, but have come to homeless, after a period of unsettled accommodation and eventually came back to homeless. So I think we keep a record of not who comes straight to homeless, because we've made some good progress with the leaving care team about ensuring that doesn't happen. But where we still have considerable work to do is making sure when people do get settled accommodation that they do maintain that settled accommodation for a period, and that's why we reported that figure in there.
Yeah, so just on that point, has there been a trend of improvement of care experienced young people who, from leaving care, are going into a much more settled accommodation than what's previously? Is this a type of statistic that's coming?
Yes, we've made inroads in making sure that people don't come directly to homeless, but while there has been a slight improvement, I would like to see that improve further, so that we support people to maintain that accommodation for longer periods.
It's very much along the same sort of point. I was looking at the contact that we make with respect to commissioning appropriate temporary accommodation for the future needs of young people. And I just wondered whether something along this line should come to the Champions Board for input by young people with respect to their experience, so that they help us shape the service in a really helpful way. I wonder, I wasn't at the last one, but I don't think this has actually come to the Champions Board in this particular form. So I wonder whether there might be a little piece of work done to definitely capture the opinions of our care experienced young people on that board.
I take it you mean the Looked After Children Champions Board, yeah, that you and I were on in the previous administration. Derek, can you take that forward with the Directorate at SIPL?
Yeah, more than happy to do so. I think it's a sound suggestion and therefore something we will happily bring forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? I have to say that this service bears no resemblance to what came a couple of years ago. It's like night and day, I have to say. And I'm not want to embarrass her, but our new graduate trainee, who's up the back, is now an employee, Amy, is up there on the left at the back. So just so that everyone knows who she is. And again, thank you, Amy, for the work you did. And I wish you well in your new career in the Dumfries and Galloway Council. Is there anybody else got any questions? No. In that case, then we'll go straight to the recommendations. We'll note the homeless service plan improvement is now 83% complete. Happy to note, yeah. And agree the recommendation in paragraph 310. Happy to do that? Yep, thank you. Agree the homeless strategy focus is in partnership working to prevent homelessness. Happy to agree, thank you. And agree the approach in responding to the interim report to the Scottish Government by the Homelessness and Rough Sleeping Action Group. Agreed, happy to agree, thank you very much. We now move on to item 9, which is the Community Facilities Review. Report provides members with a further update position in relation to the Community Facilities Review. Harry Thompson primarily here to answer questions. And I know Karen. And Karen obviously here as well. So either one of the two officers can answer questions. I'm just going straight to questions, Harry.
Just a slight correction, Chair. At paragraph 3.25, it was the big lottery fund that was being asked for funding, not the Heritage Lottery Fund.
Right. Okay. Any questions? I'm happy then go straight to recommendations if Sean.
It was just, I just wondered, it might be in a future report, just for completeness of the report. Obviously, there was a lot of good work done in 2016-17 as well, which would give the full picture. I see that it's, there's nothing in here to reflect the ones that transferred in 16-17. So it's maybe just for a future report we can see, because there is quite a list now that have actually transferred over successfully. And that would give us a kind of more complete picture. Although it's, this is encouraging progress today, but as I said, it's not the full detail.
Chair, they have been fully reported to committee previously, so I'll happily recirculate the links to the appropriate committee papers as well.
I'm not suggesting that we'd put the whole reports in, but maybe just some sort of chart or some description of just how we'd move forward. Yeah.
Sure, as you wish.
Anyone else? No, then I'm happy just to go straight to the recommendations. Are we happy in note 2.1 and 2.2? Agree 2.3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You happy to agree? Thank you. 2.8, we've considered the progress. And finally, 2.9, agree to receive a further progress report to the September 2018 committee. Happy to agree? Thank you very much. In that case, then we move swiftly on to item 10, participatory budgeting and street scene. The council plan details our commitment to participatory budgeting. During the last few weeks, people across Dumfries and Galloway have been voting on their priorities for tackling poverty in their communities. The direct involvement of local people in deciding on the use of these monies demonstrates our willingness to be a modernised council that empowers communities. We made a commitment within our budget this year to apply participatory budgeting to the street scene approach to public realm works and maintenance. I'm therefore grateful to officers for the speed at which they have brought this proposal to the committee. I'm very much looking forward to having conversations with communities at a ward level, and this not only demonstrates our commitment to PB, but our determination to be a local and responsive council. Again, I've got Harry here to take any questions. A question was asked to me, Harry, and I'm just wondering if you can just very quick briefly, just exactly what you mean by street scene. Briefly.
I'll be as brief as I can, Chair. Thanks. Yeah, the Community Asset Service, which is a part of Civic and Local Services, is responsible for maintaining open space, burial grounds, playgrounds, parks, community facilities, the school crossing patrol service and public conveniences across the region. What we're dealing with here is the community assets, the elements associated with grounds maintenance and street cleansing, and what we've been working towards over the last couple of years is bringing the staff within those services into a new job remit, which is called street scene operatives, and there's 3 levels of that. But essentially, it's skilling them up to take a more multifunctional approach to maintenance of the assets at local level.
Thanks very much. Rob?
Thanks very much, Chairman. I do welcome this because I reflect back on the discussion that we had on participatory budgeting at this committee, must possibly have been the second committee of the new council, when we were discussing both PB and its application across the council. that it should not simply be the business of the Communities Directorate alone. This to me is what PB is really about. It's not simply a matter of allocating grant funds on a comparatively small scale, although that's important. It's about communities having direct influence on the services and the resources which are allocated to them, and making sure that we spend them in the way that they feel is most appropriate. I will say again, for the record, what I said at that first meeting when we discussed this. This is not simply the business of Communities Committee. It's an approach that we wish to see the other directorates of the Council applying as appropriate to their areas of activity. Some will be easier than others. We can't cut across statutory functions. How we do it with corporate services, I haven't quite got my head around yet, but it is a principle just as much as it is a specific area of activity. Having said that, my question would be, I guess, just in terms of the feedback that is being talked about towards the end of the report, I suppose it will be slightly different for this committee, because we don't want to be looking at what communities have suggested or requested from us and asking them, well, what did you do that for? Or maybe you don't want to do that after all. We certainly don't wish to be overruling anything, but I think it would be useful for us to have some sort of feedback as a committee on how it's gone. Potentially that's something that doesn't happen until this time next year. I mean, I'm entirely in officers' hands as to how that would be best programmed into what we're doing. But I'm conscious that, in the same way that the PB funding is a new approach, so this is also a new approach, although it will be more familiar in some areas of the Council, some geographical areas, than it will be in others. I mean, to an extent, we've been inching towards this in this directory for a long time. So it simply formalises something that was already kind of getting there. But I think that having a feel for how it's gone and a committee oversight of the feedback that's come back, so that we can really just sort of get our heads around how it's been received in communities, and also, I guess, just pick up on anything that needs to be changed or improved as we go along, would be quite helpful. So maybe an indication of when we could see something back on that. As I say, maybe this time next year would be ideal, but happy to be guided.
Harry.
There is a certain amount of improvisation to the whole process. It's it's something that nationally all councils are having to look at how they approach participatory budgeting, and we don't really have too much in the way of examples from other Scottish authorities at this point in time. Certainly in terms of the services we're looking at here. I think it would be possible certainly to bring a report back to committee summarising what the outcomes, the outputs have been from the exercises, and as Councillor Davidson suggests, perhaps a later report next year to say what the outcomes have been, as far as we can see them at that point in time. There will be influence in terms of how we deploy resources at local level, but that may take more than 1 year to show benefits in terms of greater engagement with communities and improved appearance of the local areas. So in short, I think we can do something in terms of summarising the actual events themselves in terms of what was agreed would happen, but then later on a report saying what the results of those were.
In terms of some sort of reporting, Harry, I notice, Jane, I'll let you in a minute, yeah, that we're talking about community conversations at the end of May. Will there be time to kind of do an interim report before the recess on what the kind of feel for those is? I don't want to box you in a corner here, but if it's not practical, just say that.
I suspect it may well be immediately after recess that we'd be able to summarise that.
That's fine, and then that would then set us into a twice yearly reporting for that process. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, we comfy with that? Yeah. Jane, you wanted in?
Thank you very much. I won't prolong this, but just three points. On the ward walkabout that we had, I was very struck by the work that was being done with the council staff, ground staff and the schools, rural skills, and we mustn't lose sight of that. And it's not specifically mentioned here, but let's not lose that, because I thought that was very helpful. And in fact, actually, the youngsters, who as well as painting things, they were also doing flower beds and all the rest of it. So I thought that was a good use of council resource. Second point is people love an example. So in these conversations, could we maybe have some spotlight examples, what's been done elsewhere? Did you know that Castle Douglas, or Dalbeattie actually it is, their flower beds are run by Mrs. So-and-so, who's done a great job? Pictures. I think that's always very encouraging. And the third thing is, can I be absolutely sure that when one goes up to a member of staff, one isn't met with a blank stare? What on earth are you talking about? Do you all know that we're moving this street scene thing forward, and that the public, that the staff do know what they're expected to do? But otherwise, very much pro this. This is a really good way forward.
In a can-do council, there shouldn't be any blank stares. I think is the only comment I'd make to that one. It should be a smile and say, yes, I'll find out for you, or something similar. Harry, you...
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. Yeah, happy to confirm that the Rural Skills Class at Kirkcudbright Academy was the first example of engaging with the grounds workforce, but that's extended out to a number of other secondaries now across the region. But would certainly be one of the issues we'd look to highlight in the events. And take the point about examples. Yes, that's a clear issue for us. Sorry, the third point. Yes, there has been a number of events at workforce with the workforce at depot level to just confirm what we're doing. They've been fully engaged throughout the process, but in terms of the move now to street scene work as of 2nd of April. They've recently had a series of workforce meetings, and they'll continue to be briefed as we move forward.
Thanks very much. Adam?
Thanks, Chair. I'm slightly more apprehensive of participatory budgeting than Councillor Davidson is. However, I recognise this is exactly what we need to do. I think that this is exactly what communities are wanting. I know that sort of these conversations that I talked about here have been happening unofficially, certainly in my ward for quite some time, and have come up with some really good results with communities, carrying out specific tasks. But I think that also what is good here is it isn't explicitly mentioned, but I think there is a recognition that communities have their limits. There's only so much that they can do, but they do have priorities and they want to be able to air them. I think this is exactly how we can do it. I noticed, things like cleaning bus shelters. I know in all across my ward there's a couple of people who the nature of their business, they have pressure washers, and are more than happy to go and make sure that the bus shelters are clean every couple of months. And that's exactly the type of thing that we can do right across Dumfries and Galloway, listen to communities, but also ensuring that while we're working with communities and they're helping us, that we're making sure that actually what communities are wanting from the council, we can make sure we deliver that. And I would welcome some sort of monitoring. I appreciate it will be very difficult at a sort of strategic level here at committee, but I would welcome some sort of monitoring over the year as to how it's going. And, I hope it's successful, just to make sure that it is successful.
Oh, it'll be successful. David?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, participatory budgeting, it's an exciting initiative, and potentially quite big, as I understand it. It'll rise up to 1% of the council budget. That's £3 million or so. That's very large, and therefore it has to be handled very well, and seem to be handled well. I think the first round is there's been concerns raised, particularly around the voting, and but inevitably there are going to be teething troubles. At the seminar, we were shown a template of so-called best practice, and one of the items on that was a steering committee. Are we in any way bound by any statutory framework as to how that steering committee be composed? Because I'm just worried that as time goes on, it will be seen by the public as the process being steered by the great and the good in the way that they might like, even if that wasn't true. And so can we structure that steering committee or influence the structure of that steering committee in a way that we think would be open and transparent for the public?
Sorry, Chair. That's coming to June committee, David. Okay. Because I think we're in danger of getting two things mixed up here, and I don't want to lose sight of the street scene side of it, which is in addition to the anti-poverty money. So it just again highlights the commitment of the council, everyone in the council. Harry, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Chair, just to say that these are very much community-focused events, not under a formal steering committee, but we will be taking detailed notes of the outcomes of the discussions in terms of the actions that arise from the events. But they'll be focused at ward level rather than a more regional approach for these activities.
Harry, just quite quickly, I mean, can you give us a couple of examples of what potentially you think could be covered by this? So just to give people a flavour, yeah.
I think the classic examples are where there may be areas of ground that we currently cut to almost golf fairway level, but could be left to grow quite significantly longer during the summer to enable wildflowers, and insect life to regenerate, because they won't necessarily be used as either sporting grounds or for people to walk on. They are just cut, and people don't use them very much. So the areas like that where we could leave the cut and redeploy the resource that we currently use to cut the grass there to perhaps undertake other activities such as cleaning up some of the war memorials around, or to do other activities within the community asset. So those types of issues, but it's also about engaging with community groups who can undertake beach cleaning, for example, or cleansing within litter picking within some of our other areas at neighbourhood level, and we can work with them to provide them with materials to help them to do that, and they help us obviously to keep the appearance of the area at a better level than perhaps it currently is.
Thanks, Harry. And I think that, I mean, the paper's the mandate to allow Derek and his team to take this forward. That's what this is. So we'll be getting reports back to it. We did say after recess, so that'll probably be about August sometime, or around about there. Yeah, is it? Yeah. So we can await with interest what that happens. I'm actually really waiting with interest the meetings in the wards to see just exactly what the population come up with, because it might be totally different from what we think they need. They might come up with something totally different, and I think that's the secret of the whole thing, is listening to them and taking it forward if it's at all possible. So with that in mind, I'm just going to move to recommendations if there's no more questions. And we're asked to agree to the proposed approach to enabling community influence on the use of resources within community asset services. Have you agreed with that? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 11. The Land Asset Class Capital Programme 2018-19, 2019-21. Report provides members with an overview of the agreed capital investment strategy for the Land Asset Class Capital Programme and asks members to agree the proposed spend for 2018-19. Members will be aware that in addition to the existing development of 3 inclusive play parks, we will see the creation of a further 4 during the next 2 years. Likewise, improvements to existing play parks will be carried out. This means there is an additional £1 million investment in promoting safe, healthy and inclusive play parks for our children and young people. And again, Harry and Karen are here to answer any questions that may arise. So I'm quite happy to go straight to questions. Sean?
Yeah, it's maybe just an error on the page 233. It's just under the Parks Fund Inclusive Play Capital Allocation. The total should that be 1 million at the end column. $505. Yeah, and also just to thank Harry and the team for recognising the issue down at East Riggs with the drainage, etc., and its inclusion in the plan for this year. So thanks for that.
Ian?
Just on my way through this morning, Chair, I did notice that there were some new bins on the A75 within the stewardry, beside signs that said "no bin here." Well, actually there was. Is this one of the new bins here that this £5,000 referring to?
Chair, I'd have to confirm the exact arrangement. We did agree to bring the bins back where we'd taken them out on a trial basis after the 6-week trial. So it's either replacements for those that were taken away, and we haven't taken the signs off yet, I suspect it will be replacements that they may be new bins in replacement because the old ones have come to end of life.
I take it we'll be lifting the signs that say no bin here.
We certainly will, and there will be a report back to the June committee on the success or otherwise of that pilot.
Any other questions? Thanks, Ian. When are we getting that report back on the pilot, Harry?
June committee, Chair.
June committee, thank you. Well, bated breath waiting that one. Have we any other questions? In that case, I'm quite happy to move to the recommendations. Agreed? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 12, the major events strategy, the grant award to the Eden Festival. Members are asked to approve the Major Events Strategic Fund grant award to the Eden Festival Community Interest Company for 2018 Eden Festival. Again, Harry's here to take any questions. I'll let the events champion come in.
Thanks very much. I think it's really positive that we've got to this outcome with the Eden Festival. Unfortunately, it did have some difficulties at the end of last year after a sort of disappointing financial return after last year's event. But I'm pleased to see that they've taken steps, that they're working with the council, and again we're able to support what will hopefully be another successful Eden Festival come June.
Committee asks for transfer appeals mechanism. This report asks members to consider putting in place arrangements to consider any appeals against decisions made by Policy and Resources Committee in relation to applications for community asset transfers. Nick here will take any questions on the report. Right, Nick, I'm assuming this is a procedural report, the thing we need to put in place, yeah.
That's right, Chair. There's a process by which community groups can apply to the council to have assets transferred to them. The decisions to transfer any assets are made by Policy and Resources Committee, and we need to put in place an appeals mechanism for groups who may have had their asset transfer requests refused.
Adam?
Thanks, Chair. I think, it's procedural. I presume it will be agreed to in the interest of inclusivity. I wonder if we look to make the ad hoc subcommittee 7 members so that all parties that are at this, the parent committee of communities are also represented at the subcommittee.
I'm happy to second that if that's a suggestion. Jane, are you still wanting in?
Yeah, I was just going to say that seems to me an extremely sensible way forward.
Okay, so just to be absolutely sure, anybody who on this committee who's in P&R isn't eligible to be there, and we'll leave it to the group leaders to nominate who they want to take up the position. Is that right? So under proportionality, that'll be 3 administration, 3 Conservative, and 1 independent. Am I right, Nick? Yeah.
It would normally be, yes, 3-3-1.
Thank you. So we comfortable with that? Yeah. John?
Are we including subs in this, Chair?
Well, it's an ad hoc, so yes, you allow substitutes. But again, they would have to come from this committee and not be in P&R. So the pool is diminishing at fast rate of knots. Right. This is where everyone's back onto P&R. Right. So we'll just go straight to the recommendations if there's no other questions. So are we happy to agree the establishment of the ad hoc community asset transfer appeals subcommittee? Agreed, thank you. And 2.2, to approve the size of the ad hoc subcommittee with 7 being suggested, 7 members on a proportionality basis. Yep, thank you. We'll move on to item 14. Again, I think this is a procedural report to allow Derek to take things forward, but the significant budget challenge facing our council means that we need to be planning for change so that we can continue to focus our resources on the delivery of the council plan. I welcome the action taken by the Director in bringing this report before members, as it ensures we are providing clear policy direction for officers to bring forward policy proposals to modernise our council. Derek will take any questions on this, but I think, as I say, this is the mandate for Derek to take things forward. Is there anything you like?
Thanks, Chairman. No, I think, as members will be aware, the Communities Committee and Directorate has now really been just under 3 years since it was established. I think it would be fair to say it's developing its position within Dumfries and Galloway, and therefore the more inclusive we are, the more we engage you as members, the more we engage communities, opportunities are arising, so therefore the year ahead will certainly embed that spirit, and I think today's agenda highlighted that with the range of policy initiatives that we'll be taking forward. So the purpose of this report is to ensure that members are cited on these, where we're going with the business plan, and in fact I think there's an invite out to the members' seminar on the business plan. So it's just ensuring that all members of this committee feel that they've been given their place in that leadership role. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Okay, any questions? No. So we just go straight to recommendations then. So we're asked to note that anticipated key strategic programmes of work which will be incorporated into the Directorate business plan for 18-19 up to 22-23. Happy to agree? Thank you very much. Just take this opportunity to thank you all again for your input today and the civility in which it was conducted. I think there's actually lunch today. Yeah, because I thought this might last a wee bit longer than it did. So feel free. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks, Derek. Thank you. Bye. Thanks, Nick. Bye.